And Idubbbz came onto the stream, had a conversation with Noah Samsen, and I really just want to review exactly how Idubbbz came into this, because it is my firm belief that Idubbbz is not nearly as intelligent as people would like to give him credit for. I mean, I've never really been a big fan of Idubbbz beyond his, I want to say, like the funny stuff that he did with Filthy Frank. I never looked up at Idubbbz and thought of him to be like some sort of internet legend. I've always been quite critical of a lot of the people on YouTube back in the day, and I've always said that his content cops were never really that good, which is a position that I still maintain and that I still argue. I just think that Idubbbz has never really been himself. I guess he's always just been strung along by, you know, the current meta of the internet, or the current meta of, like, you know, social standards. And it makes sense, because back in the day when he got picked up by Filthy Frank, he was an edgy individual who would like to make edgy jokes, because that's kind of like the culture that he thrived in. And keep a note of this, because everything about Idubbbz will start making a little bit more sense as we go through this story.
Or is it not a Canadian
We're headed
thing?
there.
Ah. So you're warming up.
It's a good question. Was Idubbbz always like this from the start, or has it become this way because of his wife and all of the meds they take to fix themselves? And do we believe his wife is responsible for his vid? We'll get into that. We'll get into that. So keep watching. Keep watching. Idubbbz is just so uninteresting and boring these days. Even in his own podcast, which I've actually taken the time to look at for research purposes, he's just not interesting. He's so boring. And again, it ties back to like how he was in the past. Like, I don't really think that Anisa changed him at all. I think Idubbbz has always been like a very, very boring person, but he was funny back in the day because of the fact that, like, you know, being edgy and saying the N-word was funny, right? There were some things like I reviewed some of his old videos on stream a while ago, and I came to the conclusion that what he was doing was genuinely not just funny. It's just that he appealed to a bunch of edgy teenagers who thought that, again, like dropping the N-word or making, like, you know, edgy jokes was like the funniest shit in the world, which, don't get me wrong, I was one of those teenagers as well. But in retrospect, none of it was actually funny.
GeoGuessr? Yeah, I'm super down.
I mean, I'm also, you know, I'm good to debate. I'm good to talk shit. I'm good to...
Is he like this because he forgot how to talk to people? The wife fucking schizo conspiracy theory, I completely never backed. I never backed the wife theory, the wife changed him and blah, 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 blah. I never got behind that idea. I always thought it was a stupid idea. I thought, me personally, my line of thought when it came to Idubbbz is that he's always been this way. It's just that as society became, it's just that when internet social conversations became a lot more critical, Idubbbz probably got influenced by that a lot, and maybe his wife influenced him a lot too. But I don't think that I don't think that Idubbbz was ever like a very creative, a very, like, you know, I want to say I don't think that Idubbbz ever had a really strong sense of self, if that makes any sense. I don't think that Idubbbz ever had a strong sense of self. I think he's very easy to string along. And I feel like that can be proven depending on, like, how, if you've watched Idubbbz content over the past 10 years.
You know, just talk about what's happening on Twitter, elsewhere.
What is happening on
Twitter?
Twitter?
We can talk about Ethan Klein's Instagram stories. We can talk about the Palestinian plight. We can talk about...
Which I'm like 90% sure he doesn't actually know anything about. He's probably just looking to be bloviated at and agree with everything that Noah Samsen is saying. And to be clear, I haven't pre-watched this, so if that actually ends up becoming the case, it'll just be another moment of me being like, oh my god, that's just incredibly predictable, because people like him are incredibly predictable.
What my dog was doing today.
What an uninteresting
All sorts of good topics. I guess we'll start with something small, like the Palestinian plight. When you were talking about it in the, I guess, video, you brought up the topic of, like, Israel-Palestine in kind of through the lens of what Ethan was saying about it and how this group of creators were talking about it. I was wondering if there was much in that more political vein that you wanted to say and perhaps didn't talk about in the video intentionally, given the...
I guarantee you he's going to be like, well, there's not much that I can really say on stream, but what do you think about it? He's going to say something along those lines. He's going to, like, sidestep the question and get Noah Samsen to start carrying the conversation and giving his thoughts instead, and him bouncing off of that. Watch.
Target audience, or like, if that even was a, you know, intentional choice, or just
or he's going to take the easy way out and be like, oh, well, I think what's happening is really bad and people aren't being vocal enough about it, so I thought I'd mention it. Is probably what he's going to do as well.
Keep it focus more on the, you know, I guess the stuff with you and Ethan specifically, if that was like more the
yeah.
goal?
That's a good question. I mean, yeah, I think I'm still kind of trying to find my place on the internet, and I think I want to be productive, and I want to do things that I and speak on things that I care about. But I also know there's like different ways of doing that. I see videos like that you make, and a lot of the people that you've brought onto your stream, and something that I've noticed with
we're going in the okay, this could go either or. This is 50-50. He's setting up for Noah Samsen to start carrying the conversation because he doesn't actually know Jack, or he's going to make the very easy, oh, I thought it'd be important to mention because it's a horrible humanitarian crisis that's going on in the Middle East right now.
Your guys' stuff is that it's so
but it's still criticizable because obviously he doesn't know much about the situation. And if you don't know much about the situation, then who are you to be like, casting judgment or criticizing people for not talking about it?
Oh, information dense, and it isn't drama. It's like, it's a little further down the funnel. And I feel like, I might be a little bit more top of the funnel. And I really don't mind that. And I kind of want to, I think it's fine to.
Why does he have XXX Tentacion hair? Because he got paid to dye it. One of his goals was like $250,000 to dye my hair, and he dyed his hair. Or bleach my hair, and he bleached his hair.
To be, to say free Palestine, and also roll around in some of the drama slop. And, I just think for some people who are a little bit more like, I don't know, apolitical or just like not really engaged, that a video like mine might be their first exposure.
Okay, yeah. So it's the very obvious. Oh, I mentioned it because I thought it was important because it's a huge issue that's going on. And even though I'm not like anybody that knowledgeable myself, I thought it'd be important to mention it anyway, so that some people could be introduced to the issue. Incredibly predictable behavior.
To it potentially, and so I know that to not make some people fall asleep, it being on something that people obviously care about, a little bit more. I don't know, casually. It's the drama stuff. So that's the main reason. It's just like I want, and that's another reason as well. There's so many like well-educated people to speak on this, and I feel like
And then okay, so is it going to be both? Is he going to say I thought it was important? There's people that are educated on this. Could you inform me about your opinions? Is he going to do both?
I don't necessarily want people to get the the full scoop and the full bread from me. Just like an intro potentially.
Yeah, I could see that. I think a lot of creators have that same feeling, like post October 7th, where it's like the feeling where you should be speaking on this and the kind of moral imperative to speak on it, but also not having necessarily a firm background or academic background on the subject can kind of cause apprehension, I think, and that's understandable. I think the way you brought it in, I'm glad you brought it into the video, especially under the circumstances of like, this is what Ethan's saying, and I'm wondering, or this is what Ethan's saying, the video's about Ethan, but obviously these things mean a lot more if you're aware of the full context of like what he said about Yoav Gallant, or just any of the clips you played of him talking. And I'm wondering what the response was like from people, if there was any sort of inquisitive comments.
He completely dodged the question. The initial question, by the way, so that people don't get distracted and don't forget. The initial question was, what do you think about the Palestinian plight? Idubbbz completely sidesteps that, doesn't really answer it. And Noah Samsen actually gave him an opportunity to do just that by saying, or was this supposed to be more about Ethan? Regardless, Idubbbz just sidestepped that and said, oh, I just wanted to introduce it in my video so that other people who are only interested in drama could be introduced to the, the issues that are going on. He doesn't actually know anything about the Palestinian issue. He doesn't, he like, unironically doesn't know anything about the issue. He just included it, unironically, as a red herring, as a buzzword. Which I find incredibly disgusting of him to do. In a video that's supposed to be criticizing Ethan Klein. During a drama where Ethan Klein's children are being, targeted by a CPS through unknown individuals.
The politics of the situation, like where people like, like what you're talking about, top of the funnel. Like, did you get that sense from some? I know a lot of it was about the drama, but did you see anything, whether in the comments or elsewhere on the internet, that like led you towards the belief that the video is serving as a top funnel?
Yeah. As I give you my answer, I just want to say, while you were talking, it sounded like the mic source switched to like your webcam or something. I'm not sure. Okay. Just so you know, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, it's really hard, right? There's a lot of comments, and it seems like I got, like, from what I could tell, like a pretty even mixture, 50-50. Like, some people are like, oh, this is way too like into politics. They thought there's a lot of people who thought the video was too centered around Israel-Palestine. I was like, that's, in my mind, that's crazy, because I felt like it was just the smallest touch of that. And then there were some people who said the exact opposite, and they were like, oh, this is something that should have been addressed behind closed doors. Like, this is way like personal. This is your personal gripe or whatever that you're,
Yes, a lot of it should have been addressed behind closed doors. And it actually could have been solved very easily behind closed doors if you actually took a moment to hear Ethan out, which apparently you weren't interested in doing so. But then again, Ethan kind of brings this upon himself as well, because Ethan is known to be a very petty, vindictive, rash individual that doesn't really like taking different answers apart from his own, right? He doesn't really like to be incorrect. So, given those dynamics, it's entirely possible that when Idubbbz was like being approached, or Anisa in this case, because Ethan Klein texted Anisa, when Anisa was being approached in a situation like this, they were like, you know what, Ethan Klein, you have a history of being like very vindictive to our friends, so we probably don't want to like, you know, actually hear you out in a situation like this. I can definitely see that being the case, but that just doesn't make it, it still doesn't make it right. If there's that much like, you know, I want to say opaqueness in a situation like this, if there's really that much muddiness in the water, if there's really that much fogginess, why make the video in the first place? Wait till I hear his comments about the skulls. That's what this segment is about. Armored Core, I already know about that, all that. I have something prepared.
In public. So I got a little bit of both. And I'm pretty satisfied with that, because I feel like that's probably the sweet spot. You know, if people can say both of those things.
Yeah. You said you were still searching for a space on the internet, or a space with what you're making. Obviously, after you went woke, that has made it like you're in a new space that you have to navigate. And where
to be clear, I think Idubbbz has unironically always been woke, right? I hate when people try to be like, oh my god, Idubbbz has gone like lefty and soy. I think that Idubbbz has always been a sort of like, you know, lefty woke loser. It's just that he has never been really vocally soy. And I think his previous videos kind of reflect that, because he was always about, you know, protecting animals as well. He was always about making sure that people didn't get scammed and that their money was like being properly utilized for stuff, right? It just seemed like Idubbbz actually cared a lot more for people than what people like typically like to remember him for, especially when you consider some of his like other content. It's just that when it comes with issues like, you know, for example, saying slurs, when it comes with issues as like, you know, for example, like making fun of people on the internet, right? There's such insignificant issues in the grand scheme of things. Who gives a fuck if somebody says the N-word on the other side of the fucking world, when there are much larger issues to like care about here? So it's like, and he was always against as well. Like for example with Leafy, he was against Leafy and other content creators making fun of individuals that might be like disproportionately affected by harassment online. But his argument, however, was that if you put yourself in a position where you're like essentially bullying other people, then you should be also perfectly capable of receiving the same treatment right back, which I agree with. It's just kind of like, you know, it's kind of what you sign up for when you step into the internet. I don't believe that Idubbbz like, you know, became a soy woke loser, especially not because of his wife. I think he's always sort of been that way. He just took a lot more liberties back then because of how much more free the internet and how much like the internet was considered to be the Wild West back in the day, if that makes any sense. I'm willing to be corrected on my take though, because a lot of people here, or a lot of people probably remember Idubbbz in an entirely different way than what I do.
Yeah, I think a lot of it for me is just like confidence and just trying to, you know, feel good, feel proud, feel fucking energized, and like want to, you know, roll around in the shit.
He's saying this from a place of insecurity. He's not confident about this. He knows that if he continued down this path, he would doom one of his organizations to failure, which is why he gave up his organization and gave it to his partnered company. This is cope. This is absolutely cope.
Clap back and not feel like not be so like I guess
no, this is not confidence. This is you being insecure and wanting to take your own shots back.
Realize that you're like fucking doing damage. And
but the thing is that Idubbbz is like so not he's lost so much respect and so much value in the internet landscape that it's incredibly difficult for him to quote unquote roll around in the shit, as he puts it, because of how pathetic he comes across. Right? Like he could bully, like he could make a genuinely decent gotcha against Ethan Klein or anybody else on the internet, but nobody would take it seriously because Idubbbz just has an insignificant amount of respect.
Like, to be honest, I think just to have a little bit more purpose, and you know, I feel super jazzed up after this, and I hope this is just the beginning, because I want to, I don't know, there's some of that energy that I think people like recall from old Idubbbz videos, and they're like, you know, I want that old unhinged Idubbbz energy, that kind of shit. And
I don't really think that Idubbbz was really unhinged back in the day. He was just very edgy, which is different. Like, edginess does not mean unhinged. If somebody says the fucking N-word, that's not really unhinged, right? Because you can say the N-word, you could walk out the door, you're like, you know, you could walk out your door that very same moment, go outside, intermingle with a bunch of different people, black people even, and you'll feel absolutely no malice towards them, and you'll respect them, right? It's like, it's really not that big a deal to say stuff like that, so long as you don't say it to somebody with the express purpose of, you know, wanting to commit harm to them.
I kind of get what they're saying, and I think a lot of it is just generally having passion and that coming through in the videos. So, yeah,
no, the passion has to be executed in a proper way.
I think it's a process, but I think this was a big step for me. You know, to say fucking enough's enough. And
Idubbbz was 100% just conveniently leaning into the internet's favor in his prime. Anisa was also mostly present throughout that era as well. I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with that, which is why I'm heavily against the idea that, you know, Anisa had anything to do with how Idubbbz shaped. I think Idubbbz is just, again, he doesn't really have a strong sense of self, so he just sees like what's kind of like going on the internet. He sort of inserts his own values. He's kind of like a Bo Blacks in a way. He wants to have opinions on stuff, but he just so happened to do it in a way which was like kind of comedic at the time. Then he was picked up like by people like you know, Filthy Frank and Max Mofo, and that whole interaction blew all three of them up together, especially when they were doing projects like, you know, Hair Cake, Human Cake, blah 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 blah. I think it's incredibly fair to say that he just conveniently fell into this level of success because of his character, the sort of, you know, character that he had at the time. But I still think he was always like this in a way. It's just that this sort of behavior has become more apparent, and I want to say maybe fleshed out in this particular aspect over the past 10 years, so to speak. I might be using the wrong words there, but I'm pretty sure you guys are going to understand what I have to say anyways. Woke has come to mean vociferously signaling awareness, empathy, and self-serving gratitude, faux concern. The new right is just as woke by this definition. Think Candace Owens, Nuxtaku Tectone. I think I agree with that, actually. That's a really good way of putting that. Yes, the woke has come to mean to just being like super aware of some of these things. And it really is a label that you could use to apply to just about anybody these days. Anisa being Yoko Ono is a funny meme, but it isn't true. I agree. Maybe Anisa's views changed, so his did as well. We'll get into that. Idubbbz was not only a pushover, but also totally oblivious and attention-seeking, because he won-up his mates in being overly edgy in their own niches. I feel like that's actually an incredibly good like, you know, that is like unironically an incredibly good way of you know, shortening what I mean by Idubbbz just like, you know, falling into like, you know, just appealing to what was popular at the time. He won up these individuals in edginess in his own right. And it worked. Because when people weren't watching Filthy Frank, for example, they were watching Idubbbz like fucking saying the N slur and F, you know, in his own videos. I feel like that's appropriate to say, actually. You guys perfectly understand. You guys perfectly understand exactly what I'm trying to say. Anisa didn't ruin Idubbbz. I agree. Idubbbz ruined himself to impress Anisa and her friends. He wasn't actually a cuck. He simped. I can get behind that argument a lot more. I do not think that Anisa brainwashed this guy, or that he got him by the balls and forced him to be a certain behavior. I think the people that are trying to come to that conclusion are absolutely coping because they refuse to see their hero be seen in any other way where he himself was the one to, like, you know, cause these issues. Somebody with such a low, I want to say, with such a low self-esteem and lack of, like, you know, and without a strong sense of self is obviously going to try to, like, go in whichever corner they can to adjust to this, like, newfound, I don't know, like, social expectation of them.
I think I'm gonna go till tomorrow and then maybe end, which will be a full week, I think. So
that's great.
It's a lot. Streaming is hard. I wanted to bring up, I don't know if you saw the guy who made the content cop about you right after the H3 content cop was outed as a
that came across
pedophile.
My feed.
Was outed as a child rapist, which is no laughing matter, but it is just crazy, I guess.
Yeah, I got a sort of little abridged description of it from Anisa, and
hands down, this man was always like this. That's another reason why I say that when people, like, I hate when people utilize the, oh my god, he's 30 years old and he just discovered empathy argument against him. I don't think that he actually means that he just discovered empathy as in, like, oh, I finally learned how to feel for people. I'm pretty sure that what Idubbbz meant is that he finally understood how to feel bad when these internet phenomena actually start affecting people's lives. Because to an extent, a lot of people typically disconnect their own emotions and their own empathy, right, from how, you know, viral videos or how virality can affect other individuals. Because I've made a couple of viral videos, like for example on Ethan is online. Have I ever, or Eden is online, have I ever bothered to consider how the potential, you know, backlash from that video that I made would affect, you know, Eden is online? No, I haven't had the chance to like actually sit down and consider. However, once I've done it enough times, which I haven't, not nearly as much as, you know, Idubbbz does, especially not as like wide a scale as Idubbbz does, or did in the past. Of course, one of these days it's going to dawn on him. Oh, I really made, you know, this person feel bad in a way that I wasn't expecting to. I just wanted to criticize them. Oh, this person received a lot of harassment. I thought it was just giving fair criticism, right? It's him coming to the realization that things that you do on the internet can, in fact, have a ripple effect on other individuals. It's not him, like, for example, saying that he finally understood how to feel bad for people. It's him coming to the realization that, yes, the videos that he makes can affect, to a certain degree, the individuals that he's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know, it is what it is. I try to not give it too much attention, you know?
Yeah, sure.
But I think he was raising money on his video, so that's, you know, that's a good thing.
For
like cancer or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's good. Not like a legal defense thing. That's cool. Yeah. I don't know. I just I think about it a lot, like the way commentary YouTube looks and the way it's changed over time, and now like the political space of YouTube becoming more prominent. And it sounds like when you're talking about what you want to do, there's a focus on how you're working on your art. I don't know if you would call it art, but like how you're working on making a video and wanting to be passionate about it. Do you see a space where that passion would channel into more strict politics, or is your view of content still, I guess, more content focused or more on the art side?
I don't think that Idubbbz could ever be intelligent enough to actually dive into politics. And I'm pretty sure he's going to be like, no, I don't feel like getting into politics in the next couple seconds. Watch.
Yeah, no, that has been a question that I've been thinking a lot about lately. And I think, you know, back in the day, I think one of my insecurities was like, I didn't really want to kind of get, I didn't want to be known for like one particular thing. I was like, oh no, I don't want to be the Kickstarter crap guy or the content cop guy. But I think I'm a little bit over that now. And I think I've realized that a lot of my interests are political. And in a lot of these like past videos that I've made, they, you know, quite a few of them, whether I'm like complaining about a particular topic or doing a content comp on something, there is this like underlining idea or like, you know, idea that I'm like fighting for or fighting against. So yeah, I do see my content going a lot more political. Because yeah, I mean, it fucking matters to me, and I don't like I like what I was doing in the past in terms of like being able to be more top of the funnel, but it felt very like immature and kind of like you know, what's the word? Just kind of apathetic, I guess, you know, and that is like the name of the game when you're doing like kind of slop tuber commentary. It's just, you know, pretend that it's all, you know, you're above it all, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's true in some sense, but also
he didn't give it like a really clear answer. He says that he wants to, but he's not saying that that will actually be the direction. He just says that's something that he's been questioning for quite a while, which is interesting to me. It's entirely possible that he might actually go down the route of political content now that he's being endorsed. Because I did say this once his Content Comp came out, I was leaning heavily into the idea that perhaps Idubbbz might capitalize off this newfound audience and go full PredTube. That's probably like the more likely thing that he was going to be doing after that fact, which does seem to be the case. I just don't know if he has the balls to actually commit to it and be afraid of getting like, you know, political, like entering the political scene. Because again, this is a spineless individual, and the political scene is pretty visceral. Imagine he gives a take that a lot of people don't align with. People like Hassan don't align with. People like, you know, Noah Samsen don't align with. And then they like come after his neck. And then also, you know, talking heads won't align with either. And they'll also come after his neck. I just don't think he has the balls to put himself in a situation like that. I think he's very easily conquered by, you know, the marketplace of ideas.
There's a moral element to being a slop tuber and shitting on someone that's doing something that's fucked up, that everyone can see is fucked up, and building it up and then shitting on them for doing fucked up stuff is exactly what an audience wants, because, you know, you're communicating that to them. Like you're I guess setting a precedent on a social moray about.
Yeah, Ian doesn't really have a really strong sense of what is actually profound. He doesn't actually have a strong sense of what makes a good take, what makes a good opinion, and that is incredibly, I want to say, visible in his last two content cops. Because he tries to make really strong arguments, but he doesn't actually back up the arguments with anything incredibly strong. Like, some of the arguments that he presents are pretty decent. They're pretty decent criticisms of Ethan Klein on his own, but they're incredibly tone deaf, and he misses the mark when trying to execute them. which is the problem. He doesn't really know how to make a strong argument or a strong statement in any sense.
Like, oh, if you act like this on the internet, somebody's gonna shit on you and it's gonna get a lot of views. And, you know, I think that was one of, at least when I remember watching them and saying, yeah, like that's, there's like a broader thing going on here. And I know as you're making things, you probably don't think about it like that, but the structure of YouTube and YouTube commentary is kind of like, it feels like that, find a target and critique them.
You know what? That's a really good point, Armored Core. Idubbbz really doesn't have a lot of conviction. I feel like that's the simplest way that you could say that. And like to summarize everything that I said in one sentence, Idubbbz just doesn't have any conviction, which seems to be becoming increasingly more apparent.
And that can be used for good, obviously, and it can be used for bad. Like, you know, lol cows ending up killing themselves and whatever else. It's a I don't know. I think I try to relate it back to politics and think like, does that structure of like looking at an Ethan Klein and saying like what he's doing is harmful in a lot of ways, is that connected, do you think, to this this old approach of like finding a target, even though it might have felt like childish at the time? I mean, that's still the fundamental structure of what a lot of YouTube is, right? It's criticize. It's find something, criticize it, and then depending on how the audience takes it, go from there. Like, they might, critical videos get shit on sometimes, and they get, you know, they run, a creator gets run off the internet because they made a bad dunk video. I mean, you got a lot of backlash for the content, the latest content cop, I know, so you can handle it, I know, because you've been doing it for a long time, but a lot of people can't. But yeah, do you see any similarities? Like,
yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think when I was speaking on that, I guess like that was one of the reasons why I felt comfortable, you know, bringing back content cop, is I was like, oh, I have like a different perspective going into this, and I feel like my critiques are like, they're way more in line with what I fuck with, rather than kind of what I see the internet fucking with. Like, because in these past videos, it's like, okay.
Oh my god, this guy is such a moron. This Idubbbz guy is such a moron. They're more in line with what I fuck with. He can't even say, no, these are like, oh my god. He can't even say, no, these are the beliefs that I have. The reason I argue them is because I believe these things. He doesn't go on to explain why he believes these things. He just says, oh, I fuck with them. This guy has not taken like even the smallest moment to understand why he believes and I find that incredibly disappointing. Like, he can't say, well, I believe this is good because of X and Y reason. I just think it's good because I fuck with it.
Like, what does the internet not like about this person? And in a lot of cases, it was just really dumb shit, really petty shit. It's like, you know, the harshest criticism of Rice Gum was like, yeah, he's arrogant and he flaunts his money. And it's like, okay, like, that's not, you know, it was, you know, it was maybe a good video, maybe entertaining video, but it didn't really didn't fulfill me, I think, in a better way. And I don't think it was like in line with what my purpose is. So yeah, I do think there is some necessity to it. And I do like the idea of these videos like holding people accountable, even if it's just the fear of like a video being made about you. It's kind of like, yeah, I mean, you know, that looming threat of someone making a video about you is like, you know, I think it's,
which he's not entitled to that anymore, because literally anybody can make a video about you at any time. It can go viral and people can highly agree or disregard the sentiment. Idubbbz doesn't own that anymore. Idubbbz doesn't have that power anymore.
You know, for some people, it, you know, maybe it doesn't mean much, but I think, you know, until you're there, you really don't know what that feels like. You know, I know a lot of friends, myself, you obviously, like, you know, the fear of someone fucking doing a hit piece, or like a, you know, just kind of going through your life, auditing your online life, is just kind of, yeah, that's a threat.
Yeah, it's a threat. And then it's also, you know, once it gets done, there's a potential snowball effect. And I know you've seen this, where somebody makes a video and immediately that person's friend and friends. This
is incredibly ironic for Idubbbz to be saying, or for this conversation to be had between these individuals, because Ethan Klein is only going to continue to become significantly more popular and more successful after this, whereas Idubbbz is probably never going to see the same level of success he had back then. He made a post saying Idubbbz shows off his empathy, TM, when talking about Skullgate. I thought the Skulls thing was kind of humorous, especially when I heard they were from skulls.com.
One last question. Did you send the skulls? What is your opinion on the skulls, and did you send them?
I didn't send the skulls. I don't know. I thought the skulls thing was kind of humorous to hear that.
Oh, I thought the skulls thing was kind of humorous. In an event where there's so many people that are incredibly against Ethan Klein, during a time where there are some people that do actually consider Ethan Klein to be a Zionist equivalent of a Nazi, where there might genuinely be some individuals that believe that Ethan Klein is a valid target, okay? Some people are exaggerating that point a lot more than what it actually has to be, but I would not be surprised if there was like a select, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 individuals out of, you know, potential thousands of onlookers in a drama like this that really do have nothing but bad intentions for Ethan Klein. stuff like this isn't humorous. It reaches a certain point. Like back in the day, I remember there was an individual who was doxxed. There was a YouTuber who was doxxed, and somebody went up to their house and like left dog shit on their front door. If you guys remember that, and everybody took that as a threat. Everybody like widely considered that to be like, you know, of a threat, like, you know, to be sort of a threat. Well, I don't think this is directly a threat, like, you know, as an obvious threat on their life. I can see how this is obviously meant to like intimidate them, to like scare them. So to say that this was kind of humorous, again, is another layer of just, you know, Idubbbz being incredibly tone deaf and completely unaware of how like drastic these issues are.
Especially when I heard that they were like from skulls.com or some shit like that. That made it funny.
Yeah. Just a death threat to a father, a family.
Yeah. Was it a death threat?
I'm just kidding. Yeah, no. Skulls.com with the serial number still attached and the packaging still on it.
To be honest, I didn't know anything about it because I think it was linked to as like was it a response to my content column? Or was that before? I don't even remember.
Do you think he sent the skulls himself?
I don't. Let's put it this way. I don't endorse sending skulls to anyone's houses.
What if they ordered? What if they ordered from skulls.com?
If you run skulls.
Okay, I'll give a little bit of benefit of the doubt to Idubbbz. At least he tried stating towards the end there that if it can be considered like obviously he was like taken aback when Noah Samsen made a joke about this being a death threat, right? He actually attempted to walk it back and be like, okay, you know what? I don't endorse any of this. But regardless, the damage is already done. He still found it humorous, right? That was his initial idea. Maybe he is completely like ignorant of the fact that Ethan Klein is potentially being targeted by some malicious actors. Which, again, Idubbbz, you can't be bloviating about all this stuff about being like super aware about people, like, about how things online can, you know, affect people, and then not at least come to somewhat of a conclusion that perhaps these skulls were done with malicious intent behind them. But this story develops into an even bigger thing, into a little bit of Twitter and Instagram drama. So after this, Ethan Klein took a shot and said Ian lost his virginity to Anisa, and he had never had a girlfriend or been with a woman before that. This is what he told me shortly before he started dating her. And the reason why I find this incredibly funny, and the reason why I find this hilarious, is because it actually gives a lot of explanation to what we were talking about earlier, okay? Idubbbz has always been this type of way where he just tries to, like, sort of integrate himself to whatever the social standard is at the time to become more liked by people, right? So, in my mind, this is the first person that that Idubbbz has had sex with. This is the first person that he fell in love with, right? Idubbbz, in my mind, is also the type of individual that stays with one girl for a prolonged amount of time and is too afraid to break up with him because in their heads, they probably wouldn't be able to find another partner in a long time, right? That's sort of like the vibe that I get from Idubbbz. There's a lot of guys that exist like that. There's a lot of, like, you know, people in real life that have that sort of dynamic with their boyfriends where they have like this sort of codependency, or a dynamic with their girlfriends where they have this sort of codependency and they think, I can't break up with this girl. I can't leave this guy. Because if I do, my life will never be the same. I will never find somebody as good as again. I will never find somebody like as attractive again. There are people like that exist in real life. So it's entirely possible that Idubbbz has always been this weird, pathetic way. But as soon as he started dating Anisa and he started being like, you know, and he started appealing to her ideals, into her politics, into how she views the world, Idubbbz started like malleating himself to better fit a relationship like that so that he wouldn't instantly be dropped after a couple of years or after a couple of months. That's my, and to be fair, this is not a very critical theory, but that is my headcanon. Say or do, and so I'm returning the favor. My boy has not been so much as touched by the opposite sex before Anisa. In itself, it's not a big deal, but in the context of the relationship, I find it very humorous. And the reason why I'm saying these things is because the idea that Idubbbz is a very insecure individual, just to back my like sort of theory up, is actually incredibly strong. The idea that Idubbbz is insecure, in my opinion, is an incredibly strong criticism because we see nothing from insecurity of this guy, right? Everybody knows that person. They finally experience something for the first time that other people have been experiencing for a while, and then they get like a big head about it. They're like, oh my god, I finally did that. Oh my god, I finally did that. Oh my god, I finally bought AirPods. All of these brokies, they don't have AirPods, right? Oh my god, I finally bought Bape. All of these individuals, they don't have fucking Bape, but I'm wearing Bape. Oh my god, I finally bought Gucci. All of these fucking morons, they don't have fucking Gucci, right? In this case, for Idubbbz, I think he's the type of individual that finally lost their virginity at some point, and now because he finally lost his virginity, he's like, oh, I'm so much better than these individuals. I'm so much cooler than these individuals. I finally understand what it's like to be a normal person. So he's like projecting all of his insecurities on people. So Idubbbz goes out of his way to be like, he wants that incel audience bad. But Idubbbz, weren't you the one that was complaining about your incel audience only a couple of years ago? And after you finally got laid by a girl only a few years before that, you finally start turning away from this so-called incel audience that you attract, Idubbbz? Very curious. Very curious. And also, additionally, Anisa doesn't even deny this stuff. Why are you so sexually invested in us? Do I phone 911 a priest? Who do I call to get him help? Then we have this tweet, which I think was actually an incredibly bad play by Ethan Klein, where H3H3 is like, they don't deny it. My interest is not about sex. It's about how pathetic you are. Which actually I agree with. Speaking of which, Anissa's previous BF before Ian was allegedly 17 when she was 22. Which, by the way, is an incredibly thing to fucking say, an incredibly fucking dangerous thing to say about anybody because of the implications and the connotation that might be associated with that. It's incredibly gross to do that, which is an incredibly foul play by Ethan Klein, and I completely disavow it. It's absolutely gross. I lost quite a bit. I lost more respect. Not that I had much for Ethan Klein because of this. And then to be fair, also to Ethan Klein, he did remove his tweet. Okay, Ethan removed one of his stories about Anisa, as she showed him proof that she was wrong. Anisa clarified and showed proof that he was not 17. So I removed the story. And then we have this right here, where Anisa clarifies what exactly occurred here. So this is actually a lie and illegal. My ex-partner was Acadian, and it was a very public relationship. He was 19 and I was 22. You can look up his birthday and when we dated. I am beyond shocked and disgusted, which, to be fair, I think Anisa is completely entitled to that, right? There are certain levels of like shit talk that you just shouldn't stoop to. And I think Ethan definitely crossed a pretty bad line here. A very gross line. I have to make that explicitly clear, or expressly clear. I think Ethan went way out of pocket in stating that. But anyways, there is a part of Willie Mac's video that I want to rewatch to sort of hammer this point home. That Idubbbz is an incredibly insecure, pathetic individual. Because Willie Mac actually makes a pretty good point here. Let's take a look.
What did we learn about empathy? Empathy is when you sympathize with people who falsely try to break up families because they hear someone got sick, siding with people making death threats and preying on people's seemingly real fears of anti-Semitism being normalized. Empathy is when you don't honestly represent the other person's arguments and you just lie by omission to all of your viewers. For as much as Ian claims to have grown as a person, he has never lied like this before. The content cop Ian regrets most is on Tana Mojo, and after Ian apologized to her, she says she didn't deserve it.
But I'm more so just talking about like his actions to me, like, you know, him showing up to my show, him kind of putting me on blast, him inevitably making me kind of canceled and lose subscribers and have to apologize and all that type of stuff. I kind of think I'd like deserve that. And maybe that's like dark, like to say, but like, I don't feel like I'm owed an apology. I think I would be a completely different person if I didn't have that. I think I was on track to just be so on my high horse and like egotistical and like nothing could go wrong, that something going wrong gave me such a dose of reality that like, this might not last forever. Like, you need to be held accountable for actions.
This is real growth. This is maturity. What you are is a small person who doesn't have confidence in making their content anymore, so you cling on to these vampires while projecting your own insecurities onto Ethan.
This is the part right here that I wanted to look at specifically, but I thought that previous part was also good.
Hard for me on my podcast to like loosen up. It's incredibly hard. I talked about it in my apology. Like, I am so insecure about my ability to entertain. I think he feels the same, to be honest. I don't think he said as much.
Dude, this is classic projection. Ian cannot fucking manage to come up with a joke now, so he thinks that Ethan is too insecure to make jokes anymore.
I agree with this wholeheartedly. I think that is absolutely the case with Ian, and he's been showing it over and over again, especially throughout that Noah Samsen interview, where he just can't stand by any conviction. He has no convictions.
This is projection, like 101 over here. What are you talking about?
Come on, dude. You're one step away from calling me a cuck.
This part right here, when I watched it in the Content Deputy, or in the this was the Content Deputy. This part right here, when I watched it in the Content Deputy, I was like, dude, this is incredibly pathetic. You don't have to self-flatulate here. You don't have to, like, ask people to, like, take a jab at you. You don't have to, like, make these, like, oh my god, I'm so self-aware, dude. I'm so aware of, like, what people are saying about me. Just fucking make your jabs. Make your jabs without jabbing at yourself and move on.
Take the plunge.
You're a cuck. But even worse, you're mentally cucked. You're sitting on his side stream in the cuck chair as he shits all over drama streamers, slowly realizing that you fit the description.
That's part of the reason why I often don't.
And by the way, this might be a little bit of a reach, but I very much agree with it, especially when you cross-compare his reaction here to what Hassan is saying here, to what he said in the Noah Samsen interview. Because even Idubbbz says some things in the Noah Samsen interview which align with this, where when he's talking about, oh, he wants to be at the top of the funnel, making drama content. He's probably not really, too aligned with the political stuff, right? He understands his role very well in this whole sphere. He knows he's not someone that important. He'd like to pretend that he is, and he doesn't, and he definitely doesn't vocalize it, right? He definitely doesn't vocalize that he knows he's not someone that important. But he knows that he's just a drama channel who's only good at talking shit to other people.
Right back
the same way that Hassan is describing here.
Against a lot of these people that are fueling these hate raids and brigades is because I know I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
That's misreporting the news and lying.
And eventually all of that is going to be background noise. And those people, they have a shelf life. They have a shelf life because they don't have the same stubborn nature that I do.
Which is exactly what Idubbbz and Noah Samsen were talking about in their interview, by the way. Where they're like, oh, some of these people are too afraid to talk about serious topics because they're afraid of, again, having this dedication and talking about something serious because it might, it might bite into their bottom line.
They don't have the same interests as I do. They inevitably become their own worst enemies. They inevitably cook themselves. You might think you're riding high on the slop for a little bit. You might think you're getting showered with praise. An army of anonymous Redditors telling you you're brilliant. But at the end of the night, when you go home and you sit down and you look yourself in the mirror, you're not going to recognize who you've become. That's it. It's turning into a lolcow of a different variety.
Turning into a lolcow of a different variety. Yeah?
That's what I think.
That's so mean.
It's mean because
it's mean.
It's you.
Because it's you, which I agree. Which I agree with wholeheartedly. I think that Idubbbz is a pathetic individual. I don't think he's a shell of his former self. I think he's always been that way. And it's becoming increasingly more obvious as time goes on. And I do not align with the idea that Anisa has Idubbbz by the balls. I more so align with the idea that Idubbbz is an incredibly weak-minded individual with no sense of self that appeals to anything he thinks will give him a level, a level of validation. And it just so happens that since he has no real convictions, he can just LARP as aligning with all of these political individuals, and it's sort of like a pack mentality, right? When you put yourself into a pack where other people can attack for you, you never really have to do any attack and get yourself hurt. You never have to do any attack and hurt yourself. But anyways, that's the the Idubbbz segment.